agenda. We're just playing catch up here. Hi, Katie.
Oh, good. Just gave us a thumbs up, so we're on now.
Okay, Henry, you take over. Everybody else can mute.
Everybody else can mute? All
Hey,
right.
Mark, do you work tonight? Is it working tonight for you, Mark?
Is your mic on?
It is.
Mic's on, yeah. All the mic's on.
Oh,
Can't blame this on Katie, can I?
No.
no, I was having computer trouble, sorry.
Okay, where's the chairman to get this meeting on the road?
I'm right here just waiting for you to stop talking.
Well, you're chair, you can tell me to shut up.
All right. I think people have tried the past. I don't think it ever worked. When I'm starting this planning board meeting from Wednesday, September 9th, 2020. It is now 7 o'clock. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order superseding certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A 18. Governor on the March 15th, 2020 imposed a partial limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. So basically, we're here over Zoom. There's a few of us here at the table. We've got the conservation with us, and we're doing a workshop for, this is a workshop for Stonegate Construction, Inc., 1 Billerica Road and 44 Central Square. We have a new layout, and I guess we're here to hear from conservation to start with. So Dave, can you take and give us your concerns about this and what we're going with, and we'll maybe go back and forth a little?
Sure, we have not had a public meeting with the applicant yet. We are aware of the original plans, and we are aware of a memorandum from the Department of Environmental Protection. Well, I think tonight, most of our concerns will be how is the applicant going to address the DEP questions? And then there may be some general questions. We've all saw the original plan, and we have had a we have had a site walk. So when Katie gets to her presentation, somewhere in there, if she could address the DEP questions, we would appreciate that.
I will take and state right now, I'm not voting on this project because of some other issues that I have, but I will sit in for the workshop because it pertains to more than just this one particular site. Is that Katie trying to come in now?
Mr. Chair, this is Attorney Melissa Robbins speaking. I see that Katie's on the line, but if the board would like, I can just give you a little bit of background about why we requested the joint boards meeting.
That's fine.
So good evening, members of the boards, both boards and commission. Attorney Melissa Robbins for the applicants, Stonegate Construction, Inc. and Oddfellows Project, LLC. I think both of these, the commission and the board, has had an opportunity, and I know the planning board, we've had a few hearings now and reviewed some of the issues. But as the conservation chairman has stated, we've got some comments from the DEP, and really we're having some issues with complying with their comments with the building in its current location. So the building is going to need to move from its current location away from the Riverwalk area, which I think is shown on the concept plan that Colleen had linked to this workshop tonight. Katie has gone into detail with the DEP comments. We've had some back and forth with DEP about their comments. And it's Katie, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
So I will turn over to Katie just to allow her to walk through what the DEP comments are and why we're adjusting the building to where it's shown on this workshop plan.
If I may, Christina, can I share my screen just to make it a little easier? Colleen? Colleen, are you still here?
Is Colleen still on?
You should be able to now.
Okay, thanks. This should be a little bit, this should be much more beneficial than probably what you have in your packet and comparing and contrasting, but essentially, after the first Conservation Commission meeting and certainly well into permitting, with the planning board, we received a page of comments from DEP. The comments were significant in such they are not going to allow us, and I've had conversations over and above what's in their letter, which helps me and helps you understand what they're getting at. But essentially, because the building was in the bordering land subject to flooding or the flood zone, they're not on board with what FEMA approves as far as flood venting or flood openings within the foundation. DEP Northeast is looking for a completely open floor.
Excuse me, Katie, they're looking for what?
A completely open garage. So they like to see basically only the impacts in the garage as far as, piers, like something that you would see in Lowell on the river. Sorry, I'm admitting a bunch of people calling. Should I be doing? All right. So DEP has, in my conversations with Elizabeth from the DEP who wrote these comments, she had said that they have no interest in approving a project that's not as open as it can possibly be within the flood zone. And we have about 15 inches of flood zone within the building that we have in the location we have on site today. And that's the red location here that I'm showing on the plan that's up for you today. So we have proposed the foundation at an elevation such that the floodwaters could pass through vents that are approved by FEMA. And they were sized per FEMA's regulations and per the manufacturer's regulations, but DEP is not willing to approve that. They want the 15 inches to be as open as possible to allow the free flow of water with absolutely a minimum amount of restrictions. So we went back to speak with the applicant, specifically for the applicant for the multifamily building, Jay Finnegan and Eric Cates with Stonegate Construction. It's very important to them that the basement be enclosed and be weather tight because they've built about 20 plus of these buildings, I believe, at this point. They know who their clientele is. Their clientele wants a secure, closed garage. And so we went back to the drawing board and started looking at positioning of the building on the site that we could avoid the floodplain altogether. Initially, we had laid this out very similar to the Grist Mill 1 across the street for the reasons that I stated both at Planning Board and Conservation Commission. Because that building, even though it was close to the river, it was outside of the plane of the river. We have been asked to basically by the client and by DEP to look at other options. So what we looked at first and foremost was, is there a possibility of us to position the building in such a way that we could accomplish getting it completely out of the floodplain and therefore it could be built very similar to the building across the street. And that would mean moving it from the red location we have on this plan to essentially to this black location here we have on the site plan before you. This is the floodplain line here that goes through the building. And what we can do is we can accomplish this fill by taking material out of the parking lot exterior of the building. And therefore, this building can then be fully enclosed and technically out of the floodplain elevation so that water will no longer go through the garage of the building. So if you look at this plan, essentially what we've done is flip it. The building was here with the triangle parking lot here. Now that we're looking to put the building here with the triangle shaped
on mute, they can't hear, right?
in the front. I'm going to switch to just the layout plan so you can see it a little bit more clearly. So we are now completely, if we're in the floodplain for just this area here, I can remove this material that I'm filling. I have to take out elsewhere on the lot, and I have plenty of space to do that exterior of the building. What this does is it basically, like I said, it mirrors the plan we had before. It's very similar, in the fact that most of the parking is exterior of the multifamily building, and between the three buildings, the restaurant, the 8 units, the Fisk House, and the Santander, and the units that are reserved for the residences, the 30 parking spaces under the building, and then the 2 spaces for the second space exterior of the building are neatly located down this driveway so that it's very evident that these spaces kind of belong with this building. The second major item the DEP had, which we've had a lot of discussions with Evan and Katie offline in the last couple of weeks, is that they are not interested in having a brook walk on our project. They're not interested in approving a brook walk. They're not interested in us doing any work within the edge of pavement to the river in this area. And they were concerned about any vegetation that was removed in this area. So we have had to remove the brook walk from this plan.
Katie, this is Dave McLaughlin. Have they had a site walk?
So yes, so Libby went out on her own volition during the process to look at the site. So she didn't call anybody, so we weren't there to speak with her or show her where any of the improvements were going to be. It's my understanding that usually they do not go out to the site unless there's an appeal. But she did go out to the site. She did walk around. We did talk specifically about what was in that area. And she is not interested in having us build a brook walk as we had designed on the plan anywhere within the vegetated area between the edge of pavement and the brook itself. And I think Katie Girton could probably elaborate a little bit more based on her experience. What we'd like to do is the regulations allow for a up to 36-inch pervious path if it's constructed and owned by the Conservation Commission with jurisdictional areas. I know.
Katie, does this all, just as an aside, does this all also mean that the master plan for the walkway on the other side of Central Square that goes up to the Freeman Bike Trail and further in is probably in jeopardy as well if we ever get to doing that?
That's a very good question. I mean, they didn't have any comments or questions related to the brook walk on the original gristmill plan.
That's right, I remember that, right. Well, although they didn't see the full magnitude of it either. But they haven't seen the full magnitude of this one. Okay, I understand.
They approved the plan previously, they approved the plan for the gristmill, and it was very similar to the plan that we had proposed here. I did mention that to Libby when I spoke with her. She did not want to talk about what had been approved in the past. They had only requested a floodplain calculation for the gristmill one, and had no further commentary. So certainly we tried to kind of mimic what we had done for gristmill 1. Obviously that's not going to fly this time around. So we've been looking for ways to create the project, both creatively and using engineering and looking at the layout to reproduce the plan as best as we possibly could to meet the requirements of DEP so that we can hopefully succeed with both the commission and the planning board and DEP with the project once it's fully engineered. So this plan is showing a potential for a 8,000 square foot donation of land as a conversation piece for this workshop and into the future, basically between the existing edge of pavement and our property line, which is the center line of the brook in this area, that could be donated to the town of Chelmsford. And possibly we had discussed that the developer could be responsible for costs associated with the construction of a walk in the future. Certainly the land would then be in fee, potentially owned by the Conservation Commission. And therefore, Katie Girton, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the commission would then have the right to build up to a 36-inch pervious path within that area, and it would not be within an area that would be the jurisdiction of the DEP. Is that correct, Katie?
That's what I understand from the regs in the Wetlands Protection Act. It simply states up to 30-inch pervious for private walkway or 36-inch public walkway pervious on conservation land. It didn't state anything else as in Chapter 97. It just said conservation land. So to me, that means owned by the Conservation Commission. That's how I read it. The act can be gray in areas, but that's how I'm going to read it.
And again, we're just creatively trying to find a way to work with the town of Chelmsford, work with DEP and the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, Historic District Commission, all of the above, Center Village, and try to accomplish what the Center Village Master Plan set out to do within the limitations and the restrictions that we've been given. Those are the two major items. The other two items in here was our alternatives analysis, which we need to add to the narrative associated with that in construction methodology, which we had talked about at Conservation Commission as something that the commission had previously asked for in our first public hearing, which we had promised to get into much greater detail, certainly as we move this project forward.
Katie, this is Dave. By moving the building, how does it impact storm water management?
Well, so we haven't gotten that far yet.
I'm sorry.
Stormwater. Essentially, the reason we're here tonight as a workshop is to work within both the commission and the board, explain to you kind of where we've been and where we're going. It's really very costly and time consuming to re-engineer the project. Our intent would be to re-engineer the project to the same standard for stormwater that we were previously, or better. Work out those details. We need to provide you with all of the details and construction methodology, all the new updates to landscaping.
Generally, I would not think that moving the building would affect stormwater management. From my perspective, this moving of the building is not a substantial issue.
Right, and we're also reducing the amount of impervious on the lot.
Right.
You can see the current edge of pavement is out here, and we're actually cutting pieces of pavement out to do landscaping throughout in this area here. So it's just kind of moving the landscaping around and out of paved areas that exist there today. So our runoff will definitely be less. We just have to work on TSS removal and possibly some infiltration.
Does this address any of the issues that Mr. Rigby raised? He's on a butter, right?
Right. So most of the issues raised from Mr. Rigney had to do with sight lines, and I actually, let me pull up if it'll let me do a new share. I have the Google map up. This, I believe, is Mr. Rigney's house here. Do you see the GIS?
Yeah.
And this is the parking lot where the building would go?
Yeah.
So the sight line, and instead of having the building here, so the sight line, I mean, there is significant trees and wetlands here too, but sight line, and instead of having the building used to be here, it's
Yeah,
not.
it should be better for him.
I think so. The only other thing that this does is, and I mentioned it previously, and I brought my height exhibit if we want to see that again, but it raises the profile of the building by exactly 15 inches.
Right.
And that's to make sure that the garage elevation is outside of the floodplain elevation.
Can you put any of the garage below ground now because you're moving it up or not?
No, because Dave, what happens is the profile that goes with the floodplain on this lot actually goes up from here across the site and gets higher as you go towards the center. So the floodplain elevation is 124.3, I believe here. It's about 125 here, and I believe it goes up to about 128 when you get to Oddfellows. So I'm positioning the building such that the end of the building is just a little bit higher than 125.
Right. Hey, Henry, Carly, do you want to ask other conservation commissioners if they have questions, and then
I was thinking that, and I also got a couple questions for you myself.
Well, then let the planning board have their say. Sure.
That sounds great. It's your board. You know everybody. You can call them up one at a time.
Okay, Mark Gibbs, do you have any questions or comments?
I do. On the pervious and the non-pervious, what is the change going to be from what's there now, what was proposed before, and what's proposed now? Is there any change in pervious and non-pervious areas or increase?
I haven't done, here, let me go back to my other plan. I haven't done the new calculation to show the difference. I feel that based on the overlay plan, we're actually probably pretty close to where we were before. We're accomplishing the same amount of parking, which is the same, essentially the same amount of pavement. So I'm thinking that we should be fairly consistent with where we were before, but I don't have an exact square footage figure.
No, that's fine. Okay, so you'd be treating the water, stormwater, pretty much the same as you were prior.
We'll probably re-up the stormwater, but we might have to change the way we treat it just based on before we were able to create those swales.
Yep.
And little areas around the site. We're not gonna be able to do that now. So most likely we'll use something that's more structural under the parking lot to capture and treat the stormwater prior to discharge. But we'll look at some of these landscape areas if possible as surface runoff too.
My other question was, the brook walk, if that was proposed and installed, does it create a pinch point for traffic on the southwest corner?
Unmute. You wouldn't be able to put the brick walk against the Oddfellows here because the Oddfellows is, there's no room for Oddfellows in the brook itself.
Donnie, tell them the story about your first cruiser, the brand new cruiser.
Hey, Peter Padula, where are you when we need you?
So the idea would be to come through the park. All right, I just unmuted myself.
You can keep talking. I'm just going to try and figure out who this is.
Okay, so you would come through the parking lot. I haven't redesigned how this would all work yet. A lot of these walks were like we had before, but you would come across the parking lot somewhere in this area and then jump onto the brick walk, wherever that might be. So we would propose a connection to it, but come into the project site somewhere between the Oddfellows and the multifamily.
You got everybody muted?
Anything else, Mark? Chris Garahan, are you on? Billy Vines, are you on? You got any questions? I guess nobody can hear me.
I have no questions at this time, Dave.
Okay. John Swenson?
Questions? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I was, as Mark said, what were you gonna do for the infiltration system? And with all them areas taken away, but that question got answered.
Okay. And I think there's more work to be done by the applicant in that area.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
No, where's the walk gonna exit?
Well, it'll go all the way out to Summer Street, right? If it's successful. It'll exit at Central Square and then go all the way down to Summer Street. But that's a later story.
Yeah, okay.
That's what, I mean, Evan will have to address that as part of the Central Square master plan, but that's not, I don't think that's appropriate for this application.
Right, that's correct. Okay.
Carl Bischoff, have you got questions or comments?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Dave.
Henry, I guess we're all set.
All right, my one question to you is, if they're going to donate this land to the conservation, I have heard there's a lot of invasive species. If there's an erosion issue, does the town foot the bill for that stuff?
Well, if it's our land and we do the building, unless we've negotiated it ahead of time, the answer would be yes. It would have to be negotiated as part of the arrangement with the applicant, but we don't know the condition
Yeah.
of that site all the way down to Summer Street.
Because
And frankly, I don't even know who owns the land all the way down to Summer Street next to
I
Deep
had
Brook.
no idea either. I was just, the one piece, if you had an erosion issue or something else, if it, now's to look at it before you're given the golden egg. And somebody makes an omelet, I just thought that'd be one question to ask. Do you have any questions to give to us as a planning board, or that you have interest in this?
I don't think we do.
All right, who's on Zoom for me? Is Tim there?
Tim and Dawn's on. Dawn Midnight's on. I think they're all.
I'm here.
Yeah, Henry, I'm here.
Do
This
you
is
have any
Donald.
questions, Tim?
I have no questions regarding conservation at this time.
Don?
I have no questions. This was Tim, and Dawn already said he does.
All right, I got you backwards. All right. Hank, you have any questions?
Yeah, I just want to know, did the DEP see this new revised plan, and did they approve this new concept?
So I tried to re-engage with DEP, and their reaction was that once they give the comments, they will no longer be discussing the project with me. They'll only be discussing it with the Conservation Commission at the time of an issuance of an order. So what we're trying to do in the conversations that you did allow me to have her and some of the email exchange was figure out what the issues were going to be and be able to produce a plan and a project that we feel that they would support.
Okay, thank you.
Mike Walsh.
Just for Katie, I think, Katie, with the swing of the building, issues that were brought up on the 24th of June at the public hearing, which is continued to the next meeting, a lot of those issues now get aspirated regarding the neighbors, because the building is now right up on top of the neighbors. So that's something you may want to think about, that for the next public hearing, we can come in and talk about the size of the building now, being closer to the neighbors. So that's just my concern, that when the whole building is swinging now closer to the neighbors. She's going to think about it.
Can I throw something in with that?
Sure, go ahead.
I know it's not conservation, but on the eastern side, Katie, I mean, there's no real access now for the fire trucks to get, I know I'm on the fire department thing, I'm always on it, but there's no access on the eastern side of the building. I mean, 3/4 of the building you can't access, so we're gonna have to get something from fire prevention to say that's okay.
Absolutely, and that is certainly my next stop. I did run the fire vehicle throughout the site to show that it could that could access the front of the building, the side of the building, and the quarter of the back of the building, and it is consistent with, fairly consistent with the grist mill and also the previous layout, but I will be definitely working with Dan at Fire Prevention to make sure that they're confident with this layout before I come back before you.
Thank you.
Nancy Arroway, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I understand and sympathize with why this is moving. But I do have concerns over the height of the building and the fact that it's now closer to the neighbors, that it has actually gotten higher and closer. So we're going to be back looking at how many stories is appropriate for this structure. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's just true. That's all I have.
Mike Raisback, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. That's interesting. Am I understanding the vibes correctly in that the DEP has not got the least bit of interest in talking to anybody? Is that really what's going on here? I'd love to get them out here and ask them what some of their rationale was. Although I'm going to guess they probably wouldn't show.
They won't.
No.
That's not procedure. They issue comments and then it's up to the applicant to fix them and resubmit, or have the commission issue an order of conditions that the DEP will either be fine with or do their own appeal with a superseding order. They never really converse after they issue comments. They kind of throw it out there and say, here, work on it. So that is
Hmm.
standard.
That's unfortunate. I just would like to know what the underlying rationale really is, and it's not clear.
Mike, this is Dave McLaughlin. It's
Dave,
unusual.
yeah, maybe you got some ideas.
No, it's unusual, as Katie said, it's unusual for us to get comments from DEP before the notice of intent's been filed with DEP.
Okay.
So at least they gave us some heads up. I'm a little surprised at their strict comments regarding the stream.
Yeah, I had the same impression, Dave. Oh, well, it is what it is.
All right, I don't think I've left anybody out. Dave, I think that's going to wrap up our joint meeting unless you have anything else you want to talk about.
Nope. Does anyone on the commission have anything else to say or add?
About any issue if you want.
Negative.
No, you don't want us to stick our nose into your business.
No, we got nothing else to do all night.
No, I think these joint meetings to get common issues out is a good idea. I mean, we still have to have public hearings. I understand it,
Absolutely.
but I think this is a good idea.
Yeah,
So thank you for asking us.
Not a problem.
Thanks for coming.
All right.
I'm gonna leave the meeting.
All right. Well, that being off the list, administrative, 61 Dunstable Road. 61, Christopher Sullivan seeking endorsement of a non-approved, not required plan for the property at 61 Dunstable Road. Colleen, do you have this you can bring up on the screen?
I do. Just give me 1 second, I'll share the screen.
Sure. We're timing you.
It's opening. Chris is here. Chris is in the meeting. Sullivan.
All right. If we get the plan up and then we can get his comments so we know what we're talking about. Chris Sullivan?
Hi.
Can you give us a blow by blow what you're doing here?
I was looking to subdivide my lot. It's a half-acre lot, and my house right now sits all the way to the right of it. So there's a lot of land to the left that I guess was a lot at some point in time, way back in the day. But then they consolidated or something. But there's a 1/4 acre there that I wanted to subdivide out, and then either build a single family, 2-family, or sell the lot. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it, but it just seems like a whole lot of land.
All right. Is Evan in today?
Yeah, I'm here.
What is the zoning on this, Evan?
The zoning is commercial, and it is, wait a moment.
CD.
CD.
So that allows for a 1/4 acre lot.
That allows for, correct, 10,000 square feet and 50 feet of frontage.
Which we have.
Correct.
All right, I'll pass it around to the board members. Hank, you got any questions on this?
No, I have no issue with this.
Mike Walsh?
No, Evan doesn't see any issues with it. He's familiar with it,
Yep,
so, right?
yep. That's just why I brought up the zoning and the.
No questions.
Nancy Arroway?
If it's if it's 2 conforming lots, I've got no problem.
Mike Raisback?
I agree. If both of them conform, it's no issue.
Tim?
I have no issues.
Don?
No issues.
I think I got everybody. I would request endorsement. Oh, I have a.
Well, I'll move that we endorse the A&R.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mike Walsh. Can I have a vote? I got to do a roll call here because half of us are here and half of us aren't. Nancy?
Aye.
Mike Raisbeck,
Aye. Aye.
Tim, Don,
Aye.
Aye.
and Hank, Mike.
I don't vote on this.
You don't worry on this one. Unanimous. Congratulations. We'll move on to the next one. 330 Billrica Road. This is the MR
Thank you.
group. I actually listened to the meeting, so I can mull in on this. I read through the decisions. Does anybody have any comments on the decisions? Have everybody had a chance to read through it? I have looked through it, and it's fine as far as I can see.
I'm good.
I will make it clear, just because we've had this problem a couple times in the past, I don't think it'll be a problem in this one, but it shall be valid for 2 years from the date of the planning board vote's approval. I just think that needs to be said, because we've had a couple of issues with that in the recent past. As I say, I have had no problem. Nancy?
I'm good with it.
Don?
I have no issues.
Tim?
I have no issues.
Mike Walsh?
No issues.
No issues. I would entertain a vote.
Just looking for a motion to ratify.
So moved.
Second? Mike?
Aye.
Mike Walsh, second. All in favor? We gotta do the roll call again. Nancy?
Approved with your edits.
Mike Raisback?
The same. Approved.
Tim? Yeah.
Did I? Don?
Did you hear what Tim said?
Yeah, he said aye.
Aye, all right, Don?
I'm good. Aye.
Don comes in nice and clean. Mike Walsh?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. It's approved unanimously. All right. Moving right along. 248 Princeton Street. Review and approval of decision. Now, this is just a finding for applicability. I think it does meet the criteria. I think we are going to have to fine tune quite a bit when we get down to the nuts and bolts of this project, but I do think it falls underneath the COID. I don't know if anybody feels any different now that they've had time to think about it.
Just to refresh the board's memory, at the last meeting, the board did vote. That vote is codified in this draft decision. So what we're doing this evening is just reviewing and ratifying the applicability.
Nancy, you have any questions?
No questions.
Mike Raisback?
As far as I can tell, it definitely is a CEIOD.
Yeah, I would agree. CEIOD all the way.
Tim?
I have no questions either. I'm all set.
Don?
No questions.
So I guess we ratify.
No, I got a
Mike, you got a question?
I do have one
Oh,
question.
go ahead.
So I'm going to be,
Sorry.
no. So under the findings on page 2, Evan, on findings number 4, on the second line, and I apologize, I should have sent this to you earlier as you requested, but it says that the board determines that the size of the project meets the intent of the SIDP and it complies with the COID dimensions requirements, which you do. But then it says, and the size of the proposed building will be consistent with the adjacent properties in the neighborhood. I don't know if that was said last week, because this doesn't fit in the neighborhood. And we were talking about the size being large. I don't think, unless someone made that comment, that was not made in this room.
That's standard language. How about the proposed use is consistent?
You could say that. I mean, I'm fine with ending it after the dimensional requirements.
Okay.
Or it's the proposed use as a residential, it does meet as residential, it meets the neighborhood,
All right.
but the size
So
and
let
the,
me Let me, 'cause I agree. I mean, like I said, that is boilerplate language. And then on the finding number 8 is where I codified the board's specific interests moving forward related to size, massing, density. So I will revise number 4 to say that the proposed use as residential is consistent with the adjacent properties and neighborhood.
I'm fine with that. Thank you, Evan.
I would like to comment if I could. Bruce Clark, resident from Chelmsford.
Yep.
I just heard Evan say that that's boilerplate language, but it doesn't appear to apply to this particular project. To me, I'm unsure if the board has properly considered if this is the most appropriate use of the land or meets the purpose and the intent of the overlay district in regards to the character and compatibility of the neighborhood. This neighborhood is mostly single-family homes, some two-family homes, and they're on 1/4 and half-acre lots. There's no multifamily, within this RC district. This RC district runs all the way from Lowell to Vinyl Square. And it also appears that they're going to need many special permits and a variance for landscaping from the project that I saw previously. So I would urge the board to maybe reconsider or look at some additional items before they take a ratification vote. Thank you.
This is only for a finding of applicability. This has nothing to do with the project being approved.
But it doesn't appear that it meets the applicability requirements either.
All right. Colleen, is this open to the public, actually?
No, it is not.
Okay, sorry.
All right. I'll do another roll call, and it will be as amended. So, Nancy.
Approve as amended.
Mike.
Likewise.
Tim.
Yes, as amended.
Don.
Approved as amended.
Mike Walsh.
Yes, approved as amended.
And me, that's unanimous, as amended. All right. We finished one page.
I'm going to recuse myself on this one.
All right. 336 Groton Road, North Star Realty. A 11-lot subdivision. The applicant requests division sub-approvals and applicable waivers for the sub-control law and the rules. Construction of a new dead-end roadway, construction of 11 duplexes on 11 new lots. 1 new duplex replacing existing home with frontage on 336 Groton Road. The site is located in an RC residential zone. The project consists of 5 properties totaling 8 acres as shown on the assessors map 23, block 92, lots 1, 2, 3, 4, and 9.
All right, may I make a comment initially?
Sure.
I've mullened up on this one, so I'm all set.
You and I both. Katie, do you have any comments to add here?
No, we have no further testimony tonight.
All right.
We do have a new letter. We do have a new letter from DPW.
Yes. Does anybody have the letter?
In your packet, Henry.
I think we got it right here.
Got it?
From
I think so.
Christina. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, that's it.
All right.
You gotta read it. Can't read it.
All right, here we go. Dear members, this office has reviewed the site plans by Howestein Hudson consisting of 15 sheets dated March 16th, 2020, revised August 19th, 2020. A supplemental data report dated March 20, revised through August 2020. As a result, this office has reviewed in the following comments. This department shall be notified on site commencement in order to arrange for inspections. Any revision to drainage system shall be submitted and approved by this office. As it's suggested that the homeowners association be formed and the drainage easements be conveyed to the town of Chelmsford. The homeowners association will be responsible for routine maintenance, but the town will require access also. All easements and documents must be provided to this office for approval, recording prior to building permits. Each homeowner association shall be provided with documents of a routine maintenance of the drainage basins. The stormwater operation and maintenance plan shall follow and be described in the reports. The copies of these inspections and other reports done in accordance with this plan shall be forwarded to the engineering office. I don't even know what the acronym is for, but the maintenance covenant shall be created by the homeowners association, is responsible for the care and maintenance of the CUL/DE/SAC island. To provide, prior to any building permits, the sewer force main in Groton Road must be replaced with a 4-inch poly from station 1242 to station 00, whatever that means. The applicant must be coordinate with the DPW for this work. A site as-built shall be provided upon completion of the work on the site, as the building to be included in this letter from the all supporting engineering states that the stormwater devices shall be built to the satisfaction of the Mass Stormwater Standards, provided the support documents and calculations as built for the ground survey submitted in the AutoCAD paper form. Testing shall be performed in the area of infiltration of the stormwater. Maintenance guidelines testing shall be witnessed by the DPW Engineering Division. All suitable material, if any, all unsuitable discovered in the excavation filtration system shall be removed and disposed of accordingly with state and local guidelines. This project requires a NEPDES construction general permit. The final copy of the stormwater pollution prevention plan must be submitted to the town, as well as the EPA prior to the beginning of any site work. This plan shows a primary sewer layout, and the final sewer plans must be approved by the Chelmsford DPW. The purpose of the proposed sewer work will require permitting the application fees from the DPW. The sewer division connections for the municipal sewer system. This is a proposed town roadway. Prior to lot releases, all bonds shall be established for the remaining of the roadway improvements. Upon completion of the roadway and street, an as-built plan, associated documents shall be provided to the town and the town must accept it as a proposed roadway. On the opening permit required for the DPW Chelmsford Highway Division to work within the Groton roadway, the trenches permits shall be filed as necessary per 520 CMR 14, Chapter 882A. The design and engineering has received drafting reviews and comments from this office. Any questions, please contact Christina Papadopoulos at 978-250-5228. There. Now the paperwork's done. All right. I'll start with Evan. Do you have any comments here?
So just to remind the board, the public hearing is still open. There were several items that the board was considering at the last hearing. The first one was a no tree cut zone or a no building zone in the rear portions of lots 8, 9, and 10 that abut Burton Lane. The draft decision, special condition number 6, includes a no tree cut zone, but I think the board still needs to discuss that and determine whether it's a tree and/or no building, both, or some other combination. Special condition number 7 includes a condition so that no additional lots and/or dwellings shall be permitted to use this new roadway. So that was something that I heard, I think fairly unanimously from the board at the last meeting. And then this subdivision requires 2 waivers from the board. The first one is the more than 10 lots on a dead end. The second one is sidewalks not on both sides of a public road that's within the RC zoning district. As you're aware, this roadway proposes a sidewalk on one side.
Okay. Do we have anybody from the public that wants to speak in on this? Colleen?
I don't see anybody just yet. Why don't you?
I'll go around the board and see if somebody pops in. All right, Nancy. Nancy Arroway.
Yeah, no, I'm not on mute. A couple things. I'm generally opposed to doing no cut on private property. I think that's totally rude. I don't think it's reasonable to require the adjacent lot to not cut because of these lots, and I don't think it's reasonable to require these lots to not cut because there's a lot adjacent to it. Enough said on that. I do have a question on something I just heard Evan say about no additional lots off of this roadway. And I'm curious about that because I don't remember having that discussion at all during any of our hearings.
I believe Hank and Tim specifically mentioned it.
And what exactly is the reason for that? And here's why I'm asking. There's a lot to the west that may or may not at some time come under development by these same folks. It looks to me like it would make a tremendous amount of sense to access that lot or lots taken out of that from this roadway in order to minimize the number of access points onto Groton Road, which is already a very busy road. So I'm not understanding the concern on this.
All right.
So my reasoning?
Go for it, Hank.
All right, the reason I wanted that involved is, and with the cutting, is I want to protect the neighborhood that abuts that property. And 15 years down the road, someone could access it from the back and put 2 houses there. And a lot of towns do this. They stamp property as non-buildable to protect the neighbors. And I don't see a problem with that. And honestly, in my opinion, if we don't go that route, I would vote to go 10 houses, 10 units. Because we're giving them a favor, and I expect that they treat the neighbors properly. And I don't want any disturbance between that access road for the utilities to the neighbors. I want to have a buffer zone in perpetuity.
So I can understand your concern on that, but I don't believe that limiting the number of properties off of this road is going to do that, because this road does not have access to the back of those lots.
They can access it from the back road.
I understand that they could access it from the back road if they can acquire the access way. If somebody on that road chooses to sell them the access way, they could indeed create another lot back there.
And that's what I want to stop.
But that has nothing to do with how many lots are on this road.
My
Because
point, my
those-
point is someone on the opposite road can sell their property and say, hey, I'll give you an easement, and then disrupt the neighborhood just to get a quick buck. I want to protect the neighborhood. So it's just me, so whatever the board decides, go with it, but I just think we should be here for the neighbors, not just for the developers.
I appreciate that, but I also appreciate that if there is a lot that is of conforming size, you are not really protecting the neighborhood, you're just stopping development.
Exactly, that's what I want. I want to protect the
That's
neighborhood by
correct.
stopping development.
That's correct, because we're trying to keep it a neighborhood, which is what the neighbors asked. And I think that what Henry was saying, I really don't believe that we should be doing more than 10 there either. But the neighbors were satisfied with it, with the plan presented, so that's why we agreed to it. And anything we can do to protect them, I'm in favor of doing.
So I'm back to my statement that the number of houses on this road has nothing to do with that back lot and doesn't affect it, and that shouldn't be a criteria for this development.
All right, Nancy, I'm going to go through the rest of the board. I'll ask them all the way
Thank
in, and
you.
we'll take it to a vote. Mike Raisbeck.
All right, yep, I guess I'm there. I'm fine with the waivers. I'm not really concerned with 10 versus 11, and I think the neighbors have said that they like the plan that they saw, and I think that carries some weight with me. It's not clear to me how effective no build or no cut would be on the stuff that's on the far side of the easement. Now, I don't believe the power company is going to let you build anything under the wires. Is that correct, Evan? Is their easement strong enough that they will prevent any building?
Very highly unlikely they would allow any structure.
That's my thought.
Even a shed, very highly unlikely.
That's my feeling. So, yes, in theory, somebody could say, well, I'm going to put a shed on the other side of the power lines and walk to it, but that seems to me to be pretty unlikely. And even if they did, sheds being what they are, they're not very large. Certainly nobody's going to build an inhabitable structure up there. At least that's my take. So I'm not as concerned about the no cut. I kind of would like it, to be perfectly honest. I certainly wouldn't object to it. But I'm not sure that it's actually necessary to protect the neighborhood. It's my thought.
Can I rebut, Mike? I think,
Hey, I'll go around and bring everybody back again. And I'm also want to hear from the applicants, whether they're for it or not. All right, so, Tim.
Yeah, I just spoke, so I'm okay.
Don.
Yeah, I have no issue with the no cut. And additionally, I have no problem with the sidewalk just being on one side.
All right, I do agree with Don. I have no issue with the sidewalk being on one side, although most of us hasn't said anything about that. I will have one comment about the no cut, since I grew up in a sawmill issue. Tall pine trees tend to break off a lot. Hopefully they can maintain them of some sort, because you do end up with quite a bit of debris over time.
I agree.
I know there was some issue about, it gets to be a little bit of a headache for the town in the future, but I'd like to hear from the applicants and see how they feel about the no cut and the building on the other side.
Mr. Chair, Attorney Melissa Robbins for the applicant. As to the no cut issue, I think that that's fine. I think that we can add some verbiage in there that states that, obviously we have no control over the easement area that's retained by National Grid, and that the condition will allow for proper forestry management and emergency response and invasive species management as necessary. We've used that before in open space.
Yep.
We can actually add that covenant, since we already will have an HOA to maintain the drainage areas that the DPW has already requested. We can actually put that language as part of the HOA to just give a little further protection to the board. So we have no objection to that. And just to the other point as to the additional lots, it doesn't impact the applicant if that condition is in this permit, because regardless if it is or not, we would have to come back to this board for relief to add an additional lot. Regardless if it's a condition of the permit or if we're asking for another additional lot on the dead-end street.
So basically, they don't.
Well, I disagree with us.
Right, there's no objection.
No objection.
Regardless, we would have to come back to this board for relief, and they would have to make sure that it's safe and adequate as to the dead-end status. So we don't have an objection with the condition, as we'd be back to this planning board anyway to ask for relief to allow for it. So we're either asking for a modification of this permit, or we're asking for relief of another lot.
So you're okay with stamping it as non-buildable lots?
No, it won't say non-buildable. There'll be the condition will remain that there'll be no additional lots. The land itself is buildable. It just won't be, as an additional lot. We just can't add an additional lot without relief of this board.
Well, that's my point. In 15 years from now, there's going to be a different board, different developers, and someone's going to say, oh, look at there's 2 buildable lots here. So 20 years from now, that could be developed, and I don't want it developed, and that's why my wish is to have it stamped on a deed, non-buildable. Other towns do it all the time.
I think what Hank's referring to is the rear portion of 8, 9, and 10.
Right, past the
opposite
easement.
side.
Oh, on the other side of the easement.
Right.
That's
Yes.
not buildable lot.
And the
That's-
reason- Melissa, the reason I'm on this path is because your initial design, you had 2 townhouses on that property. And now that woke me up and saying, geez, down the road, someone could put 2 houses back here, which I didn't want. So you put me on the path of this mindset of, I don't want these 2 houses there. And I'm the only one, so if it goes,
I
it
understand
goes.
what you're saying, Mr. Huel. So your objection is that we don't stick the houses on the other side of that easement that are closest to the butters, because we've tucked them forward to the street now. You don't want them to go back there at a later date.
My point is, you could sell that lot, and 10 years from now, it could be developed.
I don't think the lots are big enough.
Yes,
At
they
least
are.
under current zoning.
No, they
Or
are.
are they? Or are they, Evan? You couldn't subdivide effectively.
So I think as drafted, special condition number 7 essentially does what Hank is trying to do, with the exception of specifically having the plan stamped no building, or not a building lot. Under any and all circumstances, even if it was stamped not a building lot, someone has the legal right to come back to the board, apply for variances. So this board is really not able to, you're able to create as watertight of a decision as you possibly can, which I think you've done, with the understanding that this board cannot, in its decision, cannot bind a future board. There may be compelling reasons for a future board, nothing to do with the rear portions of 8, 9, and 10, but as Nancy mentioned, maybe there's a budding land along Groton Road that a future developer and or board in neighborhood feels as though it's beneficial to tie into this existing roadway rather than creating new curb cuts on Groton Road. But as drafted, it provides the protection that I think the board and the neighborhood is looking for. It creates an additional threshold requiring modifications in order for someone to change this subdivision.
Well, it does for the time being.
Correct.
You got to look in the future. Evan. I'm looking 10, 15 years from now when you have different players involved, and it's not stamped. But
What he just said is that they can come back and no matter what stamp.
But it's going to be stamped, so you know what? Everybody's going to say it's denied because it's stamped on a deed, non-buildable. So hopefully the planning board in the future will say, you're not going to do it. I mean, towns do it all over the place, research it, but that's just my thought. Go with it. Do what you want. I'm trying to protect the town and the neighbors. That's all I'm trying to do.
All right, Colleen.
I agree with Hank, and
All right, do we have anybody from the public that wants to weigh in?
I don't have anybody in the chat.
Can I move to close the public hearing?
You may.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nancy, Dawn, Tim?
Aye.
Aye.
I guess then I'll give an aye, so we close the hearing. All right. So basically, no additional lots shall be permitted on this new public way. Doesn't really solve your issue, Hank.
No, because they can access it.
They can
from the
access
other
it from
way.
the other. From what we're hearing from Evan is that no matter what we do, we're never gonna 100% lock it off.
I disagree, but let's go
I
with people.
understand you disagree. I will run this around the board just to see how everybody feels, just because we are a
Before-
board.
Henry, before you do that, Hank, are you also concerned about a road being punched in between this dead end and Burton Lane in the future?
I'm saying they could access it from Burton Lane and have two
So is
buildable
that-
lots.
okay,
So if I own that property, I could sell it down the road and to a developer and put two ranch houses there and I'd be fine.
So, I mean, the condition can also include a prohibition of any future connections or extensions of this dead end. You know, maybe that more directly addresses your second concern above and beyond additional house lots being built.
I don't see what's so hard about this. Other towns do it. They stamp little lots that they don't want developed, non-buildable, in perpetuity, and they want to preserve it. And I don't know why we're running around this issue. It's either this or nothing.
It's not a little lot. It's part of another lot, and it's not big enough to be subdividable.
You can put two houses on it. They already proved it with their plans.
It's not enough lot.
There's not enough lot there.
So you're saying that the lot owners 8 and 9 and 10 would have to get together for that?
You could sell those lots, access them Bridle Road,
Yeah.
and put one or two houses there.
How big are lots 8, 9, and 10?
Well, they had it on their plans to put two townhouses on them, so I'm sure it's big
Yeah,
enough.
but they moved it forward and they reconfigured the land. So at this point, the question is, how many lots are there on 8, 9, and 10? And
two.
Okay,
So-
and if you,
So 9 and 10 could be reconfigured to split another conforming, not a conforming lot.
hey, you wouldn't get a conforming lot.
Because there's no way to get enough frontage on that back lot to make it a lot. It's simply, there is no way to split that up conforming to get another lot out of it.
So if you can't get a lot out of it, what's the harm in putting non-buildable?
Well, it's meaningless.
Because those
Not
lots are
meaningless, it's
buildable, and
protection.
they are building on them.
All right, well, let's go with the vote.
All right, Dawn, you can start this whole mess.
I'm sorry for the mess.
I'll start by saying I don't agree with Hank. I think it's okay to leave it as is.
All right, Tim,
You need a motion, don't you?
I'm just running around trying to get people's feeling on it. I'm not getting a motion yet and voting yet.
All right.
I actually agree with Hank, and maybe they won't be able to do it, but if it gives the neighbors some sense of security, I don't see why we don't do it. The other thing is, I really am not comfortable. I would have been happier seeing 10 there instead of that. And I think we've kind of all agreed, after the neighbors were saying they were okay with it because they had moved them back. But anything we can do to help the neighbors and keep the neighborhood a neighborhood, I think we should be doing.
Yeah.
It's our job to protect the neighborhood and protect the neighbors. So I agree with Hank, and if there's a way for Evan to put something in there, I'd still like us to do it. That's all I got.
All right, so now we're down to Mike.
Well, I would like to protect the neighborhood. I think what we've got protects them just fine. I think the possibilities of further development are very, very small. And a future planning board, possibly with changes, some future changes that we don't know about in zoning, could, in theory, allow something. We cannot restrict what a future board will do, any more than the government can pass a law that says next year's legislature can't overturn this law. We can't do that. We can operate on what we have for current rules. If there were a restriction in there, it wouldn't bother me. But I don't see the need.
So you would be with Hank if they could do it, but if they can't do it, you're fine without it. It's basically what I got.
Yeah, and I know.
You're too much for a
from
lawyer.
experience-
I asked for a simple question, and a half an hour later, we're still trying to figure out what you said. Sorry, Mike, I couldn't take and help myself.
I know. Well, what can I say?
And Nancy, I can get the drift of where you're coming from.
Okay, so I'm against putting any kind of restrictions on the back of those lots. I think that it would be just as rude to restrict those lots from having a shed in their backyard as it would be to restrict the existing houses on Burton Lane from having a shed in their backyard. Fair's fair. And I don't believe that duplexes destroy a neighborhood, which seems to be the thought that I'm hearing from some of our board members. And I fail to understand why a duplex is an inferior neighborhood. I am curious from the applicant why Lot 12 extends as far toward Groton Road as it does, because to me it just doesn't seem to make sense in terms of future potential utilization. But that's their choice, not mine. So I'm absolutely okay with a sidewalk on one side of a dead-end road. I think it would be crazy to put sidewalks on both sides. So that's all I have to say.
I am fine with the tree restriction with the, what the applicant's lawyer has said with a invasive species, maintaining and everything else. That's basically not a no-cut zone, but there is some ability to do something in there because, as I say, you get a good strong windstorm come in and those pine trees will break like kindling. Well,
Henry, can I just mention one last thing?
Sure.
If the developer's attorney is willing to actually put some sort of language in there to help protect the neighbors, to give them some sense of security, why as a board would we not want that? I don't see why we wouldn't want that, especially if it gives those neighbors that sense of security. You know what? We don't know what's going to happen 15 years from now.
I understand. I'm not exactly sure that the applicants...
Whatever happens then, happens then.
I'm not exactly
All right, well-
sure. I'm not exactly sure that that's what the applicant's lawyer had said as far as... there's not going to be anything else off of this road. This road is going to be done with 11 units. What we're talking about is something in the future coming off of another road from somewhere else. Right now, looking at the way the votes are in the board, I think we have, if I'm to do a vote count, Mike is wish-washy back and forth.
Oh, no.
And I can't vote.
You can't vote. Don is definitely against it. Nancy, there's 3 votes. Basically, that's...
I get the votes, it's special.
I mean, we got you and Tim.
Yeah.
If I vote for we got a split decision, that gets us nowhere. I think I would take and go with. I guess I'd have to go with Mike and Nan on this one, unfortunately. But
Thanks.
I think that's basically where we are, just because I don't think we can get any clarity other than Evan has told us that we really can't restrict this. So
just to clarify, I think the board does have the legal right to restrict. I'm not sure you've specifically asked the applicant if they're willing to put a note on the plan. If they're amenable, then that's a second additional layer of specificity and protection. But even that can be undone. But I just want to make it very clear that I think the board, out beyond the no-cut zone, I think the board does have the legal ability to restrict additional lots, dwellings, and extensions of the proposed roadway.
Oh, I don't think the proposed roadway is going to be done. I'll go to the applicant.
Yeah, just a point of procedure. I know you closed the public hearing, but we have no objection to adding the note to the plan. And I'm sorry I was unclear in my previous statement, but regardless of what happens on this road, we would have to come back to this planning board for relief. So I'm satisfied with adding a note to the plan.
All right.
And what is that note? What is that note?
It would say no for, it would on 8 note, just for point of procedure, Mr. Chair, if you're okay.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Just on lots 8, 9, and 10, it would say no further subdivision. Because just to be clear, we can't say not a building lot because it is a building lot. That language is used when you create extra lots that don't meet the requirements. These lots actually do meet the requirements. So we can't use that exact language.
When you say they're a building lot, they're not a standalone building lot. They're part of an existing building lot.
Exactly. So they can't be further subdivided for access off of the road that's being created.
So essentially you're agreeing to a condition to put no further subdivision, which essentially by default means that there will not be an additional lot and or dwelling on those rear portions.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll take it.
Good.
All right. With that being said,
Would you like a motion?
Yes, I'd like, now we can have a motion, Mike.
Thank you. I'm always up for a motion. You know what my next one's going to be. I would move that we approve this subdivision with the edits that we've just put in.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Here we go for the roll call again. Nancy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes, with the edits.
Don?
Yes.
Yeah, another yes from me. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, members of the board. We appreciate your time and energy on this. Thank you.
All right. Not done yet. All right. Citizens petition. 248 Princeton Street. Citizens petition to rezone. This is brought forward. Do we have Matt Hansen here?
No, this one's Bruce Clark.
Bruce Clark, sorry. Bruce Clark. There's Bruce Clark here.
Yes.
You got the floor. Go for it.
Okay, hi, good evening, members. My name is Bruce Clark. I'm a Chelmsford resident, and I didn't realize that the other part of the 248 Princeton Street was going to be on tonight's agenda when I submitted my petition here for the same property. But I did submit a narrative to Colleen, but I will go over quickly what I have said. And part of it was I did go to the building department and looked at their street folder. And it appears, there has been a restaurant at that location going back to the 1950s. And over the years, they were granted variances for nonconformity. Till 1974, they got a variance, but they built the addition 3 times larger than what it was supposed to be. So they weren't able to use it until the property was zoned commercial, which it appears was probably done in 1976 or 77. I'm not unsure. And then a permit was issued to finish the addition. So they, in 1978. So since that time, it's continued to operate as a restaurant until it was closed last year and then recently sold. So I'm looking to, to get it rezoned to be basically the same as the rest of the neighborhood. And as part of my narrative, the first thing was, the purpose of zoning is to protect the health and safety of its occupants and encourage the most appropriate use of the land. So the current zoning, roadside commercial, doesn't fit with the neighborhood anymore. The rest of the neighborhood is owned RC, which is medium density residential. And that residential zone extends all the way from the Lowell city line to Vinyl Square for about a mile on that side of Princeton Street. Princeton Street no longer, the main route that it used to be north and south since Route 3 was built. Obviously, at one time that was, the major road. So basically, it's residential even in Lowell, and a commercial district is no longer needed here and should not be zoned for a business that could, be a high traffic generating business, such as a restaurant and so forth. The next thing is, the lot is so small, it doesn't meet the minimum requirements of 40,000 square feet. And the building, can't meet the setbacks because it's required to have 60 feet setback on the front and 50 feet on the sides, and the lot's only 110 feet, so there's no place that could be built without variances and so forth. And realistically, the lot's been spot zoned. I think there was an influential businessman back in the 70s that may have got it approved as a commercial lot, but and some of the things that to determine if it's a spot zoning is if it singles out a small parcel of land, which this is, and it's zoned different from all the other lots. Economically benefits the owner. It's more detrimental to the neighborhood. Is it normally would bring more traffic to the area with that type of a commercial zone. And, because the variances and the special permits would be required to build anything there, where it's abutting the residential district, it should not be zoned commercial.
All right.
And I do not believe that, the district, the commercial district in there, is in conformance with the purpose of the zoning bylaw and consistent with the master plan. So I would urge you guys to take a look at that and maybe consider rezoning that and getting it placed on the fall town meeting warrant. Thank you.
All right, do we have any comments from the owner of the property? Evan?
I believe their attorney is on the call with us.
I would like to hear their side of the...
I think Doug Duchesne was representing the proponent at your last meeting for applicability. But Melissa, I think, was on the call earlier. We did not provide, I don't believe we provide direct notification. I can't recall, I was on vacation the previous week.
We really need to have a comment from the actual property owner. I'm sure they're gonna have a different view, but we have to hear all views as far as a board. If you can get them on for the next meeting, and then we can take and run it around, at least we can either give a yay or a nay, or what the board feels about it. But I honestly feel that we should hear from both sides. I can't see them wanting this, but it's been this. I've been around town a long time. That I can't remember it not being there. All right, well, we got another one here to listen to, too. Matt Hanson, are you around?
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having me on this evening. I don't want to take up a lot of your time because I know it's getting late. I believe everyone received my email with basically just a two-page overview of what I'm recommending to the board. And I did give a brief overview of this to the Master Plan Committee at their last meeting. I'll share my screen. Host has disabled that, but I see, I believe Evan has pulled that up. So the first page is just a quick overview. I won't read it verbatim because you already have it, but basically there are 10 properties just outside the current Center Village overlay that I'm recommending be added into the Center Village overlay. They're all non-conforming uses. Again, not non-conforming properties, but actual non-conforming uses. They're all in the RB single-family zone, except for one property which was already converted to the commercial district as well as the CEIOD. So again, no single-family homes are being proposed to be added into the district. When I look back at the history of this, it was back in 2014, 2015, the town basically chose a study area of Fletcher Street to Summer Street, and that's where the zone ended up. So a lot of thought was put into sort of the east and west boundaries on where it should end, and it really ended at other overlay zones or high-density districts or at residential districts, but on the north and south, it just ended at Summer Street to Fletcher Street. However, as everyone here is aware, the local historic district really starts at Worthing Street, and our town center really starts at Worthing Street, and the town's doing a lot of work in that area right now. I just think it's a more accurate depiction of our town center. So I propose an article which is, the language is very brief, and then the map is here. So you can see the highlighted area in yellow. Those are the 10 properties that I am proposing to add. And very quickly, I had something pulled up on my screen. I was just doing this when we were talking, but I know I can't share it right now. But if you were to go around in Map Geo and click on all of the other parcels around the current Center Village overlay, it's completely surrounded by either the CEIOD, RC zoning, public zoning, or on the west side, residential homes and church property and town property. So this area that I've shaded in fits in nicely with that, basically the whole rest of the zone. I know everyone is familiar with this section of town and what those current properties are. So I don't need to go into any more detail than that. I think looking at the types of properties that are here, it matches the rest of the Center Village overlay. I honestly think it was, could almost be just considered basically an oversight that when this area was designed, it was, you have to pick a study area, and they chose Fletcher Street to Summer Street, which was kind of a natural area, but it's been 5 years since this has been looked at, and I think these properties fit nicely. And in full disclosure, I brought it forward because I own one of the 10 properties there. I bought it off my father last year.
All right. I'll run it around the board. We should take, Evan, does town council have any feedback on any of these two?
So, as you're beginning to see, these are both citizen petitions, so we don't have any formal process. If this was a planning board initiated decision, we would have notified property owners at this point. We would have engaged counsel at this point. So as you're seeing with both of these, I'm not sure that all impacted property owners have been notified of the planning board discussion. I'm not suggesting that was required. So at this point, it's essentially an opportunity for the proponent to have a introductory conversation with the planning board. My assumption is that the proponent's preference is that the planning board would support and then become the official sponsor of these articles. In doing so, they would no longer be citizens' petitions.
Well, with the citizens,
but the board also has the option of essentially not taking any official planning board role in sponsoring the article, other than your recommendation to town meeting. So at this point, no, council has not been engaged.
All right.
If I could just clarify, that certainly was my intent to start the conversation, but as one of only 10 property owners, and I think this is consistent with the town's planning efforts, I hope ultimately the board agrees. So my hope is that I start the conversation here this evening, but at some point in a few weeks, the planning board holds a public hearing on this, and if you like the idea, you would take it under your wing. Certainly happy to speak, in favor of it and why I think it's a good idea, but ultimately, I'm only one of 10 property owners. I don't have a specific plan in place, and it would, I think it would come across better from the planning board and getting other input from other boards like the master plan and others when it goes forward to town meeting. I think citizen petitions are good if you're trying to rezone one particular property for one particular reason and you've put a plan together and you're ready to go. But if I bring it forward as a citizen petition and people say, what's your plan for your property? And say, I I haven't spent any money putting any plans together because I don't have any immediate plans, and I certainly wouldn't spend any money on a property that's zoned RB right now. So I'm hoping that the board can just start the discussion tonight and ultimately take this under your wing if you'd like to.
All right, do I have the mic back now? All right, so what I would like to do, let them go forward as a citizen petition, because I can't stop that, but I would definitely like to take input from the neighbors, make sure the neighbors are informed, get legal opinions, and go from there. I'll take and do a light hearing. They can take and bring it in at front of the town meeting and do whatever they want. That's their rights. I would take and do the research to make sure that all the neighbors are aware of what's going on. I would like to make definitely sure that the property owner on Princeton Street is aware of what's going on. Otherwise, this stuff is going to be a disaster. But my opinion is right now, we get some public input. The next few meetings, we try to make sure that the other 10 residents know. And we listen to the public. That's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
I don't know how any of the board members feel, but I think that's the way it should be handled.
Is the Center Village Committee still around?
It's still around.
So this should go in front of them, because we have an issue with the Center Village Committee regarding the parking needs to be addressed.
Well, maybe we can have a joint meeting with them
So
the next time.
before we go expanding the area, we should be addressing what's the issues with the Center Village right now.
I understand 100%. That's why we have a lot of people to get on board. We got a short time to do it. I think we can do it. I think we can get to the point we can endorse or take no opinion on some of these. I think that would be a great way of handling it. But I think we have to do our due diligence as a board.
Yeah, I really agree with Henry, and I'd say even though there is no process defined for citizens' petitions, there's no reason in the world why we can't loan both citizens our process, which does work, and is everybody's comfortable with. So if we could get it in front of town council, and if we could have a public hearing, that would be just fine. Whether or not it actually is technically part of our process is kind of immaterial.
Yeah, all I'm saying is usually we take... Go ahead, Nancy.
Yeah, any way you look at it, this is a zoning change, and the planning board is expected to present an endorsement or otherwise at town meeting on any zoning changes. So we need to give this full evaluation of, is it appropriate for the areas, and provide our endorsement or not.
Yep, I agree with you, Nancy. That's kind of what I was trying to say. Don, do you have any opinion?
No, Henry, I think you're spot on. The public should be aware of what's going to happen in these two areas. I'm interested in knowing, Matt, why you're on the phone or why you're still with us. What's the benefit to the town? And is there any particular benefit to any property owner?
I would like to take and keep that for the meeting where we take and actually start hashing this out, and the next meeting we can have public input. We can have him make his comments in front of the public, hopefully, if some people will tune in. And Tim, did you have any comments?
No, I agree with you all. I think getting the public input and go from there.
All right. Now we got one other thing, sewer capacity update and discussion. Evan, did you have anything on this for us?
Yeah, it's just a quick verbal update. And what I'll say this evening, I believe, will be more formally presented at an upcoming Board of Selectmen's meeting. But the update this evening is essentially 5 items that are being worked on simultaneously. The first one is to update the existing sewer regulations DPW is engaged with council to do that. The second item, so the update of the SOAR regulations does not trigger any town meeting or select board vote. Those are regulations similar to planning board regulations. It's a vote of the department unless otherwise changed. The second action item is to prepare a temporary and limited moratorium on SOAR moratorium. That also is being prepared by DPW with the assistance of council. Conceptually, that limited moratorium and temporary, limited in the sense that it is contemplating targeting new connections as well as a change of use to existing connections that result in a high flow increase. DPW is working on trying to figure out what the thresholds should be. Limited in the sense that it's anticipated that it would be on the books for likely up to 12 months. So that's a work in progress. The second action item.
Would that be for single family and multifamily, or would that be for the entire town?
So the discussion to date has been not to apply the moratorium to single family construction and likely not to duplexes. Essentially, as the board knows, those are by right developments, meaning A&R developments. Definitive subdivision is also essentially a by right, meaning it doesn't trigger a special permit or a zoning permit or a variance. So the strategy at this point is to try to distinguish between by right development as well as development that is low flow, meaning not high flow or high density projects. Another example is additions to existing single families, in-laws, new bedrooms. All of those are currently viewed as by right and low flow. So those are not contemplated to be part of the moratorium. The third item is a town meeting warrant article to revise section 132.2, connection to the public SOAR. As some of you may be aware, if you've been following this item very closely, there was I guess, an assumption or a thought that the town's current regulations prohibited on-site septic systems and/or treatment plants, and by default, you were required to tie in to the municipal system. Council's been on record saying that the existing section 132.2 actually does not specifically prohibit on-site systems, but it refers to where it is reasonable or not reasonable. So the purpose of the third item is to clarify that section to specifically indicate a reasonable distance where connection to the municipal system is not required. So town council is working with the Board of Health to update and revise that section. That would require a town meeting vote. The fourth item is an attempt to obtain information on existing soil flows at the Lowell Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility. Chelmsford Engineering is engaged with Lowell officials, and those conversations are ongoing. As you're aware, the Chelmsford has presented a 5-year average, and that's the kind of information we're looking for at the Lowell plant as well. And the fifth and final action item is to have Weston and Sampson conduct a study and report related to scope, cost, timetable for resulting in additional sewer capacity. So what are the short, intermediate, and long-term options, cost, timeframes, and so forth? So an example has already been identified as using Southwell for the town to have its own wastewater treatment plant. Obviously very costly, a long-term solution, but that's an example. And that's a study that I believe the Board of Selectmen, or the Select Board at this point, have requested. The item that is not part of this this update, and some of you may have heard that at one time we were considering having a zoning article to address this. At this point, that is not part of the strategy. And I think the reason for that is that, I think the board is well aware of what I'm about to say. Prior to the sewer capacity becoming an issue, I believe the board on numerous occasions, individual members, as well as likely all planning board members, agreed that it was time for the planning board to revisit the overlays, particularly the number of units per acre or the density that the overlays provide. And I think the board has articulated that things have changed. We reached 10%. Neighborhoods, as well as community sentiment and board sentiment has changed as it's naturally going to do. So the initial zoning article, if there were to be one, as drafted by council, was to go into the special permit criteria. And as you're aware, one of your special permit criteria is for the board to make a determination that there's adequate infrastructure. What was being discussed was to provide preference within the special permit criteria to encourage or push development to use on-site treatment plants as a preferred option as part of a planning board considering special permits related to overlays. So it took me a little while to connect the dots. I explained to council that I thought that the planning board was already going to go back into the zoning bylaw and consider making revisions to those overlays prior to the sewer capacity issue coming to our attention. Council's thought process was that that concept would be codified as one of the purposes within the moratorium. So at this point, as I said, there is no zoning article contemplated for fall town meeting to address this. If the planning board agrees with what I'm saying this evening, then that will become a purpose statement within the moratorium, where the planning board will have the next 12 months working with your variety of stakeholders to bring an article to town meeting to address what I would refer to as, and I don't want to put words in the planning board mouth, but revisiting the overlays that result in high density projects that ultimately result in high flow projects, primarily multifamily. So that is the update that I wanted to provide you. As I said, this will likely be discussed in more detail at the upcoming select board meeting.
All right. I know the numbers of units. I'll let Nancy and Mike handle this because they were the spearhead for the 20, which I was pretty sure was a 40B number that we were trying to keep going. I think it's worth having a discussion, but I don't think we have to take and go through a town meeting to take and lower that number, because I think that's a number that was set here at the planning board.
So I agree with you in the sense that if the board wanted to re-articulate the legal framework of the overlays, the board does not have to continue to approve 20 units per acre. However, my interpretation of what the board was thinking of doing or considering was going back into the zoning bylaw and officially and formally asking town meeting to adopt revisions that would, for lack of a better word, put a cap. Maybe it's a sliding scale cap based upon different circumstances, but that's what I thought the board was interested in discussing.
I think we could have quite a discussion, and I think it's probably going to go on a lot longer than tonight we'll have. We probably need to have a workshop.
Yeah. So
And I'm already flowing a bunch of different ideas in my head that there's different ways of controlling this thing.
Exactly. The update tonight was in no means asking the board to begin this conversation. Essentially, what I am looking for tonight is initial indication from the board that the strategy not to include a zoning article for fall town meeting makes sense, and secondarily, for the board to provide its indication that this concept that the board had identified probably 6, 7, 8 months ago of an interest in revisiting the overlays, we would then codify that into one of the primary purposes of this limited temporary moratorium.
All right. So I'll take and run it around. We're getting late in the evening. Let's take if everybody agrees with what Evan's saying, we can start a discussion. There's nothing here that's saying that what we're going to have to discuss or what we're going, we're going to come up with our own decision one way or another. Don, how do you feel?
So a question for Evan. A lot can happen in 12 months. Does this buy us some more time to resolve this issue, or?
I believe it does.
I don't anticipate the issue being resolved in 12 months. I think that's likely why this is being viewed as a phase 1 limited moratorium. If trends continue, likely within 12 months, we will officially and formally use up the remaining 70,000 gallons.
All right.
So, Don, do you feel that we should start the discussion anyway, so we should start talking about it?
I'm okay with not going to town meeting.
Yeah, we're talking, it would be Springtown meeting before we do anything.
Right.
Tim?
I'm okay with discussing it too, and I think that we probably should.
Mike, Raceback.
Yeah, I would agree as well. I would also say that, the moratorium buys us some time. It doesn't necessarily have to be time used to create a new zoning article. It could also look into our own regulations that we have that are outside of zoning articles. One other thing I want to add is we've talked about all sorts of things to do to try to relieve the problem with sewage flow and capacity. I haven't heard anybody talk about general conservation. The savings do not have to come from new buildings or lack of new buildings. They can come from existing buildings. I was looking around, I realized I got an old house, I got 3 modern hoppers and 1 old one. That's going to get replaced with a low flow. And there are probably some things that the town can do in addition to the 5 things you said. And I'm certainly fine with having this a longer term discussion on the board.
All right, Hank.
I agree, we should have a discussion. I hope it goes back to the Paul Haverty and them, that like Nancy's suggestion about the gray water. I mean, if you had a small development and just say you get to put gray water in your own tank.
Yeah.
Or give tax incentive to homeowners to put gray water wells in, you would save a lot of water. So I don't want them to discredit Nancy's idea with the gray water just because it's all or nothing. So
Yeah, no, we've got a lot to talk about.
we got a lot, but I just want Evan to take that back and say we could look at that just that gray water concept.
Mike Walsh,
I'm good with starting the discussion.
and I'm good with starting it.
Not tonight.
Is that what you needed, Evan?
It is. I just want to clarify that what we've discussed this evening, the strategy for purposes of planning board business,
Right.
Yeah.
business for the next foreseeable future would continue as usual. You will continue to rely on the DPW letter.
Yeah.
The revised section 132.2 would specifically allow on-site treatment plants and septic systems. So the moratorium would likely target, as I mentioned, high density and high flow volumes. That in and of itself will essentially send a message to potential planning board applicants not to submit an application. However, someone can still submit an application to you, but it would likely be approved with the condition that it would not be tied to the municipal system. So I just want to make that crystal clear that what we've discussed this evening is to essentially allow the planning board to continue to do its business within the overlays and using your discretion, understanding that anyone who comes forward with a high volume or high density project, if they're seeking approval from the planning board, it's going to be an approval that requires on-site treatment.
Yep. I think that's pretty much pretty clear right now.
Yep.
All right. One last thing, meeting minutes. I've taken a look at them. I have no issues. Anybody have any issues with them?
I have no issues.
Nancy?
I'm good.
No issues.
Tim? It's fine. Dawn?
I'm good.
Mike Raisback?
I'm good.
I guess we're all good on this. Now, Mike, one more motion from you?
If I may, I would move to adjourn.
Have a second?
Second.
Second.
Can I do that?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.